Good day everyone. So my name is Rakesh Vincent, metric number D201910881008. So I'm from Group B from Reflective Practice in ESL Classroom, and today I'm here to do reflection on my teaching video. Alright, so before moving on to the reflection part, I would like to just give a gist of my video, which is my video is a teaching video to Form 4 students about prefixes. So basically they are intermediate level, and I taught about 9 students there. Now for the 9 students, I have developed the lesson plan with 3 stages and 4 activities for them. Alright, so I'm going to reflect on my teaching video based on Corpora model, which is the first element is cognition, second one is practice, third one is observation, fourth one is rationalization, and the last one is action. Alright, so the first element of Corpora model, which is cognition. Alright, so the topic that I choose to teach to my students is prefixes. Why I choose prefixes? Because nowadays prefixes is very important when it comes to building a sentence during a daily conversation and everything. So I choose prefixes as a topic to teach my students, as it is easy to understand for students and easy to inculcate between them. So my focus is to enable students understand the prefixes and make them to use prefixes to construct sentences and use prefixes during writing an essay. My target is to make the students learn the characteristics and examples of prefixes. So for the lesson planning part, I choose Form 4 students as my classroom students, and the topic was prefixes. In the beginning of lesson, I played a video about prefixes to make them understand, to get a clear picture about prefixes, what they are going to learn. And then I gave them some pictures that combined with prefixes, incomplete prefixes, so that they can identify by using their thinking skills and find out what is the correct prefixes. Then I gave them a practice on prefixes where they have to fill in the blanks. By this activity, they can understand well about prefixes, how to use prefixes in a correct situation, in a correct form. And lastly, I gave them Kahoot quiz to make them get engaged in classroom. Moving on to the next element of Corpora model, which is practice. So basically, the activities taken place during the teaching lesson is set induction, presentation stage, practice, and production. So the first stage, which is presentation stage, which is set induction stage, I showed them a short video with the duration about 2 minutes about prefixes, so that students can get a clear understanding about prefixes. Why I choose a short video instead of a long video? I want them to understand what is prefixes. If I give them a long video, it would take time for them, and it would be hard for them to understand at first attempt, because that is, for me, that is the first time I'm assuming that they are learning about prefixes. So I don't want them to get pressured. Therefore, I choose a short video. Even though it's a short video, it's a contented video which has all the elements, which has covered all the elements about the prefixes. So I choose that video for the students. So, and then moving on to the presentation stage. After playing them a short video about prefixes, I asked them that they can ask any questions, whether the examples of prefixes if they didn't clearly get what is prefixes about the samples and how they can use prefixes well, in what situation, in what manner, how they can use prefixes in their daily lives, as in conversation, in a daily talks, in a polite way, in a polite conversation. Then I continued with the next activity, which is they will be given photos and with incomplete prefixes combined. For example, I give a photo and then just a prefix, so they have to link the prefix and the photo and combine it to come with together with the prefixes, complete prefixes. So they have to figure out the incomplete prefixes by using their thinking skills. They will be given time to think, and for this activity I asked students randomly, which is they took the turn taking pattern for this activity. So the task was carried about 10 minutes. Students really enjoyed this activity, where they were very active and participate fully in this activity. I gave them a full instruction so that they can do this activity very well. Next, which is practice stage. Moving on to the next activity, which is fill out the blanks. The passage is about, I gave them a passage with the blanks, and then the answers are given below to make them easy, so that it would be a guide for them to do the activity. So the passage is about Catherine that wanted to plant Daisy. It was very helpful for them because the answers already given, and for this activity I called them randomly and they did well, and only few were unclear about what they have to answer, and one or two students answered wrongly. I correct them. So basically this is like this. And then the last stage, which is production. For production stage, this was the last activity where I gave them Kahoot quiz to do, and the quiz was about prefixes. The reason why I gave them Kahoot at the end of the lesson was to make them feel energized. I don't want them to feel bored and like a serious class. I want them to have fun and at the same time learn what is I'm trying to teach them. So therefore, Kahoot was my last choice for them as an activity. All students were active and all of them took part in this activity. Most of the students did well in this Kahoot game. This activity was conducted about 10 minutes. Moving on to the third element of Corpora model, which is observation. For me, observation is very important. This is because this is where you can find your students, how they are focusing on class, how they are performing in class. So in my class, what have been taught and learned? Based on my observation, some students were active and some are not. But most of them were engaged and active, taking participation in activities conducted. Although the class was conducted in virtual mode, the students still enjoyed all the activities throughout the lesson. The student didn't make any problem by using virtual mode is an issue for them. Instead, they enjoyed the class and it was a comfortable moment for them. And most of the students enjoyed all the activities, and especially guessed the word activity, where all the students took part in this activity. There was no any problem there for students in that particular activity. Students also were very cheerful throughout the lesson. However, some students were not so responsive and they were quiet for some time. They were so quiet till I have to call them on repeated times. At one point, students are really confused and unclear, so it makes them to just stay quiet, and I have to call them repeatedly. For example, do you have any questions? You going to answer this question? So I have to ask them repeatedly to make them answer to me. So for the context, I used Canva to teach and explain about the topic to students. To show the examples, I showed them a short video to have proper understanding on prefixes. So I used Canva as an interesting teaching material for them. As Canva is used widely, it was very helpful for me to teach students. So here comes the important part, which is problems faced by the students. During the lesson, I noticed that some of the students were facing problems to take part in classroom activities that I have conducted. This makes me to call them on repeated times and at one point I was waiting for so long for their responses and there was still no response. I can understand their intermediate level and I was surprised that some of them need to be called and they will not participate in the activity voluntarily. Where I have to, at one point I have to call by names because there is no turn taking at one activity, which makes them to keeping silent, and I have to call them repeatedly. It was very hard for me to call them, to manage them at that time. Thus, it makes me to call the same person again and again to answer the questions. And these also make others to lose concentrate as they have to, as I'm calling the same person to answer my questions frequently without following turn-taking pattern. Besides that, some students were blurred and unclear because they were not given proper instruction before the activities conducted. The next element from Kapora model, which is rationalization. Challenges faced and reasons. The most challenging part for me was when I asked questions to students. No one came and tended to answer for my questions till made me to call students repeatedly and waited for them so long. This disturbs me on time management where some activities took more time than expected than initially planned. At times, students were unclear because they were not given a proper guide for them to do the classroom activities, which made them to stay quiet and clueless on what to do. This leads the classroom to cause lack of focus and students went out of focus. Moreover, some students needed more guidance when they need a proper explanation and samples for them to refer and guide. In that case, they will not have any kind of confusion or troubles for them in classroom. This is because I cannot only focus on one student and I have to focus on all of them, and each of them will have different types of learning and understanding. So this makes me to go with their way to make them understand what I'm teaching them. I admit that different students with different level of proficiency in a place which is classroom. So it is not good to teach in my way, but I have to adapt their way of learning to make them understand what I'm trying to teach them. This is the easy way to make them understand what they need to learn in classroom. The last but not the least, which is action from Kapora model, the last element. Alright, so for the problems that I have faced, the action or solution that can fix the problems, which is I need to clearly prepare myself before start the class, where I need to go through the teaching materials and the lesson that I'm going to teach my students. It is good that I prepare myself well first and then going to teach my students, because a good preparation will lead you to teach your students very well. So therefore I have to prepare myself in terms of go through the lesson before going into the classroom and make sure the learning or teaching materials is in a proper way, in a proper standard that students can understand in students level and etc. It would help me to teach well to my students and make them understandable. Besides that, I should have explained it to them about all the activities more clearly so that they would get a good and clear picture about the activities. This is especially for the third activity, which is fill in the blanks. At that part, I have instructed them, but I didn't give them time to go through the passage. So this made them to feel hard, as they have not get attached to the passage. They don't know what is the passage about, as I just go through the passage without giving them time to read the passage. This made them to feel hard and get started to answer the questions. So then students participation is also lack at some point, where they just stayed quiet and didn't show good responses, made me to doubt that they are really paying attention or not in classroom. I should have come up with proper guidelines and instructions before instructing them to do the activities. They were all in during lesson, but when it comes to activity, they stepped behind and made the classroom mode empty, where no responses, quiet, just a short answer for the question that they should have answered in a more proper way. And other than that, I need to encourage them to be more active in classroom, as students were very passive at that time. They need a little motivation before the class starts, or just like a mind game to make them energized and to maintain the spirit, and then to make their mind clear and happy, so that they will have motivation to study in the classroom, to do the activities happily with their friends in classroom. And the most important thing that I want to make sure is they can participate well in classroom activities, so that they can understand and get engaged in activities and understand the lesson. Alright, so for the critical reflection part, based on this classroom lesson, I got the chance to reflect on myself. How am I teaching? How am I doing in classroom? And how I can improve my teaching styles, the way I'm approaching students. And I realized that I have several types of beliefs on teaching dimension that need to be improved, so that can fit students with the quality teaching styles and knowledge. So I believe that students learn English language through their mistakes, where in my classroom, when they do mistake, then only I can correct them. So it is a chance or an opportunity for them to learn new things, because if they didn't make any mistake, they don't know what they are trying, or they are correct or not. So if they tried and got wrong, that is where they can learn and they can improve themselves. Furthermore, I also believe that a good and interesting teaching materials would help students to learn well in classroom, where a good designation of teaching materials which is interactive and fun would make students to get engaged and have a serious paying attention on the lesson, where they can learn well compared to the normal teaching materials that are used in traditional classroom. And I also believe that students learn a language through their experiences, where what I'm teaching them would be their experiences that they can use in their daily lives, during their conversation, daily talks, in writing essay, constructing sentences, and etc. With that, I also believe that I should come up with a good preparation and with good instructions for them, so that students can learn well in a proper way of learning, where they will have a comfortable kind of learning. They can understand well, and will ensure good environment for them, and a very understandable environment, and they can understand well about what they are learning in classroom. So that's all from me. Thank you so much.